He has become the go-to destination for in-depth, in-person, one-on-one interviews with the biggest names in sports entertainment. He just keeps getting bigger and bigger with millions of viewers on all of his platforms. Chris Van Vliet, thanks for taking the time. Great to see you again.
Always so good to see you, Sean. And I can't believe the words you said are true.
Oh,
I guess they are. Thank you so
no,
much.
it's phenomenal. And we'll talk about we talked a few years back and my, how much has changed. So let's start right there and just talk about your overnight success, because that's exactly the way it happened, right?
Yeah, the overnight success from a broadcasting career that started in 2004 at a small radio station, 570 News in Kitchener, Waterloo, Ontario. That's my college town. The way this started was I wanted to work in the real world. College was great, but I didn't feel like I was learning a lot of real world stuff in my
Right.
classrooms. Reached out to every radio station, every TV station in my college town, said, "Can I just come in and learn and see what it's like in the real world?" And my first paid job was a board operator at this news radio station. And then after my shift was done, I would go into the recording studio and I would read the news scripts of the day and just like so I could build out a demo reel. So
Well,
yeah, the overnight success,
yeah.
20 years in the making.
Well, and also, and especially when we're talking the platform and what it's become now. And I think I don't I know you started a YouTube channel years and years ago. I mean, this isn't something that you just picked up even 5, 6 years ago. I don't it was like early 2000s, right? When you started a channel?
My first channel was
Yeah.
2007. I was working for MTV2 Canada at the time. And like we would interview these massive bands and these massive actors and comedians, and they would just air on TV. And
Right.
like I'd be like, man, there's got to be another fan of this band that lives in another part of the country or the world that would love to see this interview. I created like this it was under like some silly username at that point in time because I thought I might get in trouble if my boss found out
Right.
I had a YouTube channel. But that was 2007. The channel I have now started in 2011. So yeah, we've been just, it started off as me just throwing stuff up on the channel. Here's an interview with Morgan Freeman. Here's an interview
Right.
with Tom Cruise or Steven Spielberg. It's turned into, I got to interview a lot of wrestlers, which being a lifelong wrestling fan was so cool. But that was the wrestling interviews started to really take off, and I really leaned into that. And here we are now.
Yeah. And you know, I don't think people, because everybody has started a YouTube channel or something like that these days.
Yeah.
And they may, I worked so hard 6 months. I was posting every day. I was putting things up. They don't really have an idea what goes in. And I want to mention the fact that started this thing in really 2007, got really maybe serious about it with the channel in 2011. But what goes in to doing it, uh, really day after day? Because even if you're not putting something up, you're probably creating.
Sure, and I think that
Yeah.
it's interesting that you say, this example you use of somebody posting every single day. I think most of the people that give up do not post every day. They post
Yeah.
like 3 times in 3 months and go, "Oh, it's so much work. I'm going to
Yeah.
give up." But there's obviously a ton that goes into this. It's shooting the stuff, it's editing the stuff. It's if you're doing interviews, it's tracking down those guests, it's doing the research for those interviews, it's uploading it, it's promoting it, which is a big thing I don't think people think about. And if you don't love every single element of that, if you're not
Yeah.
passionate about every single element of that, it's going to fall apart at some point in time because the editing, which is a ton of work, if that's not something that you're passionate about or you enjoy, that's going to start to fall behind. And if that
Right.
starts to fall behind, then everything else starts to fall behind. And I think that I'm fortunate that in my first ever TV job, which was 2005, I worked for a small station in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. They called me a news reporter. I was essentially the guy who wore all the hats, as you know,
Yeah.
Sean.
Yeah.
Writing, shooting, editing, reporting, producing your own news stories. I think because I had that experience early on of seeing how all of those different jobs worked, I think it gave me a completely different appreciation for the creator economy now and how it works of like going out, whether you're shooting it on your iPhone or and you're editing on your iPhone or editing on a
Yeah.
laptop, whatever, gives you this appreciation of how all of those different jobs work and how each one of them is so important.
Yeah, and I'm sure you value all of it today because you're right. I did the same thing, even when I started working with Major League Baseball productions early on, but it was interesting then because, it was in New York, which was all union, but this was a non-union shop. So we got to do everything. And as you mentioned, at the time, you're like, God, I'm doing all these different things. And then later on, look how much value it has added. And, we both kind of have in common, we've worked for corporate television through the years. And, you talk about your humble beginnings, but you really worked your way up into a very successful situation in Miami and working, a very popular show there. And you took a big risk, Chris, stepping away. What made you finally decide, if I'm going to get to where I want to be, this is the way I'm going to have to do it?
There's so much that went into it, Sean, but I guess it
Yeah.
ultimately boiled down to I worked at a TV station in Peterborough, Vancouver, Toronto, Cleveland, Miami, and I absolutely loved that. And my dream was always to be on TV. That was my dream as a kid, was to work in broadcasting.
Yeah.
And I think what it ultimately came down to was when I was in Miami, I'd been there for 5 years. I was on a show called Deco Drive. It was the number one entertainment show, live at 7:30 every single weekday on the Fox affiliate there. I traveled the world interviewing the biggest stars on the planet. It was an absolute dream job. In my spare time, I was still doing this stuff with my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So whenever there was a wrestling convention around where I was living in South Florida, or whenever WWE or TNA or Ring of Honor was in town, I would do an interview with them, put them up on my YouTube channel. Those were doing pretty well. And I kind of had this crossroads where I was taking vacation days to like go and film interviews for my YouTube channel. So like things were doing pretty good with my YouTube
Yeah.
channel. And it was like 2018 when I hit 100,000 subscribers and got, one of these silver play buttons for the
Yeah.
first time. That was 7.5 years into my YouTube journey, by the way. Again, going back to the
Overnight.
overnight success thing, right? I just asked myself, like, what would happen if I was doing this with all of my time instead of just my spare time? What would that look like? And I was making almost as much money on YouTube that I was at my full-time day job on TV. And 2019, as you remember, was a pretty exciting time for wrestling.
Yeah.
AEW came in. It was the first time WWE had competition on a national television station in almost 20 years. There were so many people who I had connections to through the indies that I was able to just send them a message or give them a call and say, "Hey, I'd love to do an interview with you. I know you signed with AEW. I'd love for more people to know about your story."
Yeah.
Those interviews started doing like really, really well. So I just had this moment where I was like, let's try, and like if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But
Yeah.
what if it does? So
Yeah.
I went into it with the idea of like, let's just see what happens. I trust that there's something here. There seemed to be enough people watching online and looking at the comments. It seemed like people were interested in these interviews, which by the way, I was shooting on my iPhone, which oftentimes was being held by one of my friends. So I just went for it, and I'm so glad that I did.
Yeah.
Although I will say that I left my TV job on October 1st, 2019. About 6 months later, the world shut down. And my whole plan and my whole
Yeah.
idea of going to wrestling shows or going to wrestling conventions wasn't a thing for most of 2020. And that was really scary. But in Zoom interviews, I figured it out. But I think the interesting thing is like, if you've got this feeling in your gut, you've got this idea that it might work, go for it and see what can happen.
Yeah, and you have a very unique style, and I'm sure maybe you watched over the years people that the way they did things and just took a little bit of here, a little bit there, but you really it's you. And I think you said once, and I thought it really struck me when you said you kind of like the idea that I'm having this conversation at a restaurant with somebody, and there's people that are nearby, and they just kind of keep doing that. They want to hear it too. And and you mentioned it's like, it's a conversation and the way you do it. Uh, what, what is the way that you really approach that? I've seen you do these interviews. I don't see any notes anywhere. So how do you
Oh,
really
they're on the
approach them?
floor. They're there. Don't worry.
Well, however you do it, it just looks really natural, like you're just having this conversation.
I think it comes down to the idea that, like, in our real life, we're not doing interviews, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's a pretty big, scary word because interviews in our day-to-day life happen in very rare situations. Job interview, right?
Right.
Which is scary in itself. Police interview, which is
Yeah.
obviously terrifying, right? But
Right.
there's not a ton of like actual interviews that are happening. So I think it's kind of, it doesn't do it justice to call these interactions interviews. What they are is they're conversations. And that's what we do, hundreds of times a day, every day. And I just started to think about them as conversations. If I were to bump into you, Sean, at the grocery store and I hadn't seen you in a
Yeah.
while, I'd want to just learn about your life. Oh, I saw that thing on social media. Tell me a little bit more about that. And I think that that's how our interactions actually are. And growing up in Canada, there was this great broadcaster, this great interviewer who I'm sure not a lot of people in the US will know, but his name's George Strombolopoulos. And he was so good at just having a conversation, and it felt like two friends just catching up, whether it was with a world leader or an athlete or an actor. He had this way of finding a way to build rapport with them. And I just admired that so much. And I tried to take little bits from that. And I agree that just with like the idea of podcasting in general, long form conversation where
Yeah.
you're uninterrupted, like me and you just sitting here and having a conversation, not checking our phones, just like being present. It's such a rare thing right now
Yeah.
that we are locked in for this next hour and we're just going to share a conversation. And I think that like there's a certain part of society that is like yearning for that. So I think that that's one of the reasons why podcasting works. But I like that idea of like, if it's just a conversation of you and me bouncing off of each other, that is like something you would have at a restaurant where someone's like sitting at the next table going, oh, that's interesting. Oh, wow. Or
Yeah.
like sitting, sharing a cup of coffee at a local cafe, and someone's just kind of leaning over and going, oh, wow, look at that. Because when you think about people who are the best at what they do, most oftentimes you or I are not going to have a chance to just run into them in our daily lives.
Right.
But if someone like that, like if you're a huge football fan and Tom Brady was sitting next to you at a restaurant, you'd probably be leaning your ear over and trying to listen to that conversation. Or if you love the Rocky movies, for example, and Sylvester Stallone happened to sit down next to you on an airplane and he's having a conversation, you'd be listening to that.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to think about with podcasts. It's like, I want someone who could be a fly on the wall in those conversations to just appreciate the conversation, the back and forth that's happening.
Yeah. And also, you mentioned that uh, when you have that interaction, it's tough to do on Zoom. And there's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and that's the way we do it. We get, people to get in front of a camera. But you made a decision early on. You said it was interrupted a bit early because things that were out of your hands, but to do that in person and be that one-on-one, because that changes the whole dynamic when you're watching it. I wanted to add also, I think that you are so popular with the people that your viewers is because it's like you have that friend who knows somebody and you're going to tell me what this guy's all about. That's kind of like the way I feel it comes across. But to make that decision to go there, and you've got to get them in a hotel room, you've got to get them in a location, could not have been easy. I know it is easier now because of your notoriety, and of course, whenever you've got the subs or whatever, people are like, "Oh, sure," but that wasn't the way early on. And to make a decision like that, what did that really take to keep
Well,
doing that,
look, it's still
interview
not
after
easy.
interview?
It's still not easy. I mean, I
Yeah,
just got back from New York City where I did some interviews. I was in Houston a few days before that. It's still not easy. But I think what
yeah,
it comes down to is it actually goes back to my background in broadcasting. And I did so many of these junket style interviews for these big movies or these movie premieres. And you'd have the option a lot of times where they would be like, you're invited to do an interview in Los Angeles, New York, Dallas, London, wherever it happened to be.
yeah,
And then sometimes you would get the what seemed like the secondary invite. You'd get the invite to do the interview over satellite, and, which
right.
is now turned into Zoom in the era that we're in now.
Hmm.
And it always just kind of felt like you were getting slighted. If you were doing an interview over satellite, it's like, well, what do you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Like
You got
my
5 minutes.
schedule's free.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Right.
right. And it's going to be 4 or 5 minutes no matter what. But like, I would much rather sit down and shake the hand of George Clooney or Julia Roberts or whoever the massive star may be, rather than just like them popping up on a satellite screen and chatting with them.
Right.
And I think for me, it dated back to like that idea of like, did you really meet somebody if you just looked at them on a computer screen? Like, yeah, of course, we shared a conversation, but like, did you really
Yeah.
meet them? And I
Yeah.
think that that's actually a really interesting conversation to have of like, if you've never actually physically shook someone's hand, given them a hug, looked them in the eyes, have you actually met them? And like, I think that with me and my other friends who did junket interviews, we would talk a lot about like, oh yeah, I got invited to the junket for this massive
Yeah.
movie, but it's over satellite. And it's
Yeah.
like, it was like this idea of like, I'm doing the interview with so and so, but it's not in person.
Yeah.
And I think I always kind of carried that with me of like, it's just not the same if you're not in the same room as them. And I think that nothing beats being able to shake someone's hand, look them in the eye, like feel their energy. And I made a conscious decision early on that I wanted to do that. Whether that was driving hours and hours to do interviews, like I did an interview with Chris Jericho right after he signed with AEW in 2019, and I drove almost 5 hours each way for a 20-minute
Wow.
interview. And like it's things like that where it's like that interview is so much better because I got to for that one, I sat in the back seat of his car and my friend Daniel was in the front seat, like turned around holding my
Yeah.
iPhone and filming it. I just think that you get such a better interaction in person. And then to your point, there's this idea of like that's a guy I know, like there's that 2 degrees of separation now.
Yeah.
That guy I know who I've been watching for a while is in the room with that person. And I also think that like you can take a photo. You can take a photo with your arm around them. Hey, so and so joined me in the studio, or I joined
Yeah.
so and so in whatever city this was. That's something I'm going to try to continue to do as much as I possibly can. But I'm sure there will be an instance where someone's like, like The Rock's available, but
Mm.
only via Zoom. And I'm not going to be
Yeah.
like, well, no,
Yeah.
thank
No.
you.
Tell them unless it's one-on-one, I'm out.
Right. But I think my last Zoom interview at this point was like 2 or 2.5 years ago. And
Wow.
that's not a
That's
slight on doing
incredible.
Zoom interviews. I love
Yeah.
that we live in this world right now where like you and I are in different time zones right now.
Right.
And we were able to click a button from the comfort of both of our own homes. We're able to have a conversation as if we're sitting in front of each other. And I love that idea. But for me, if someone says I'm available, I will do whatever it takes
Yeah.
to be in the same room as that person. A lot of times early on, it was like I was opening up credit cards to get the air miles so that I could, like, oh man, if I open up this new American Airlines credit card,
Uh,
that's like two, maybe 2.5 flights. So I can figure that thing out.
well, that shows your commitment too, and that helps with these people or their people, when they know the effort you're making to do that. And bouncing off that junket circuit, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine you've probably done thousands of interviews at this point. But what did you take from that, and how? Because interviewing the biggest stars in the world has got to be intimidating, and at some point, maybe you get over that. I don't know, but what did you learn from that and take from doing those interviews?
Oh man, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things I learned was to build rapport as quickly as you can. Like you've got 4 minutes for an interview. Sometimes that gets cut down to 3.5 or 3 minutes or even less,
Right.
depending on that person's schedule and whether they're running on time or not. So, like, I think one of the biggest things I learned was the interview begins the second you walk in the door. It's about like coming with, big energy and hoping that they're going to match it from the second you walk in the door. And I've seen so many people walk in, oh, hey, yeah,
Yeah.
nice to meet you. Okay. All right, are we ready? Okay. Okay, and then we're here. And like then they would
Right.
pop up
Right.
the energy, and like there was nothing more awkward to me than sitting in a room with, a massive star and like, I don't know, just making it like a weird interaction. So I think that was number one. Number two, I really learned like the power of trying to get a sound bite. And especially when you've only got 3 or 4 minutes with somebody and you're trying to make a news story or a news package about this movie, but you're also trying to like interject a little bit of personality or something fun or trying to get them to answer a question they never answered before.
Mhm.
That was an important thing of like honing a question and trying to figure out like a different angle on something or like a lot of
If
it
they haven't
was
been asked 15 times, or yeah,
right,
right.
15 times
Yeah.
that day,
Yeah. That day.
Yeah. And I think another one was like swinging for the fences is something I also learned is like sure, you've got to get in the soundbite about that movie.
Right.
But a lot of times it'd be like, there's a movie I wanted to ask a question about. Like when I interviewed Robert Zemeckis, my favorite movie of all time is Back to the Future. I think
Right.
it's the most perfect movie. I interviewed Robert Zemeckis, but I'm like, I gotta ask about Back to the Future. So I slid in a question about Back to the Future in the as the last question in the last minute of this interview. I think that was another part about it, like a swing for the fences. And if it doesn't work out, and if the question goes awry or they don't receive it well, just cut it out.
Yeah.
Just leave it on the cutting room floor. It doesn't need to be seen. The only people that will know about it are you, that person, the few camera people in the room, and that's it. And I think that was another part about it.
Yeah.
But I will also say that I think junket interviews also taught me that I so prefer long form interviews.
Mm.
I love being able
Yeah.
to have an interview where we can let the conversation breathe a little bit, ask a
Yeah.
follow-up question. Sometimes it's not even about questions. It's just about an observation of like, just like saying a statement of like, it really feels like you dove into this character. Or if we're talking wrestling, it just seems like these last 6 months, you've been on a completely different level. And then they can just
Yeah.
take
Like,
that
yeah.
and run with it.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that worked so well in
No.
junkets.
No, and especially sometimes things come up and you just go down a completely different road because you're listening
Yes.
and it's magic. I don't know where that came from, but and also interviewing these celebrities, and I love this with people. Well, they're just people. No, they're not. Right? I mean, they're not normal people.
Yeah, that's interesting because they are, right? And I think that if
Yeah.
you boil it down to they came to Hollywood with a dream and a
Right.
goal and they worked really hard and they got a break, right?
Yeah.
But also, they're walking into this room with a publicist and a makeup artist and a stylist and a studio rep. And like, they didn't have to park their car like 4 blocks away
Mm.
and like walk over and get it validated
Yeah.
like I did. Like,
Right.
yes. So they are like us in that they are like humans
Right.
and, they have a job, but they're also not like us and like that there's sometimes special treatment, in those ways,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it was a great training ground.
for sure.
And you really have become known as the go-to, as I mentioned, for sports entertainment now. And you have this passion for professional wrestling. It's kind of blended together. Was that the focus that you said, I want to be able to be the guy that just interviews the biggest stars in professional wrestling, or did that just kind of evolve? And I'm sure you're happy about it, but how did that really start to take off? Was it just the consistency? You kept showing up and making all these connections? How did this happen? Because now, you see there's millions of views of these interviews now. They just keep waiting for the next one to come out.
If you go back to my YouTube channel, probably 3, 4 years ago and beyond, it was a mix of everything. It
Yeah.
was the big movie stars promoting the big movie of the time, but it'd also be whatever wrestler happened to be in town. I'd say it really started to shift for me like 2.5 years ago, WrestleMania 39. Because if you look at my podcast episodes before then, I always had one wrestling interview every week, but I
Yeah.
also had another episode where it would be an actor, a comedian, an
Yeah.
author, a speaker, an entrepreneur, someone that I was interested in learning from. And I always think that one of the best things about podcasting is if the host is truly passionate about it and is truly interested, and you're just kind of like listening in and you're able to learn from that, I think that that's when they work really well. But WrestleMania 39 came here to Los Angeles. And I was like, what if I could bank a bunch of interviews? Like, what if I could just, instead of doing one wrestling interview a week and another one of something, some other vocation, what if I could just do wrestlers and let's see what would happen?
Hmm.
So I banked something like 14 interviews that week. It was like I was going crazy. Just anybody that would say yes, I was doing these interviews with them.
Yeah.
And I think the next month, May, I ran all wrestling interviews. And that was my biggest month ever on the podcast. I was like, okay, well, I think we're on to something here.
Wow.
And then the next month after that was all wrestling interviews. And then that beat the previous month. And then I just continued on that trend. I'm like, I think I see the writing on the wall here. I already love wrestling and love talking to pro wrestlers and people within the industry.
Yeah.
It seems like the audience seems to really relate to that too. And when I would dive into the analytics, the wrestling interviews always kind of like they always did well, no matter who it was, whether it was a wrestler, a commentator, a manager, a legend, whatever. They always did well. And the other episodes, even though they might have been fascinating, like I had an FBI negotiator on,
Yeah.
Chris Voss. I thought that was such a great episode. They always just did okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Even if they were someone that had millions of followers on social media. And I think what it really speaks to is like the internet is great about like finding your niche. The internet's really
Yeah.
good at going, saying to the
This
audience,
is your thing. Yeah.
yes, we know that you like watching these videos about cats, for
Yeah.
example. We'll show you a bunch of cat videos on Instagram and YouTube. You really love watching wrestling stuff. We're going to show you a lot of wrestling stuff. And I think my audience was, they were wrestling fans and maybe they liked this other stuff, but it was very clear that the wrestling stuff worked. So that's, I think, when things really kicked it into high gear when I went all in on wrestling. And I love it. I've been a wrestling fan
Yeah.
since I was a kid. I trained to be a pro wrestler
Yeah.
when I was 20. I was a backyard wrestler in high school. Like, I love it. I love it so
Yeah.
much. And how fortunate am I that I get to talk to the men and women who I looked up to as a kid. And I get to somehow, Sean, call this a job.
Yeah. Well, and the fans for wrestling are incredible. I mean, I've worked and covered every professional sport there is, and I've never seen the loyalty that you see with wrestling fans. I mean, I
For
left the
sure.
WWF, WWE in 1993. I still get mail from all over the world with those Topps baseball cards that people just put them in an envelope with a self-addressed envelope inside, and will you please sign it and send it back? And as I've kind of gotten back into, that world, I've just been blown away. I was over in Manchester for the Love of Wrestling. I hadn't been back to the UK since we went over there years and years ago, and I was thinking, okay, it'll be all right, but I was just could not believe it that these people were coming up, and because they had the Coliseum videos were all that they got back then. But it's true that that audience, that niche, as you say, is so vast, and they're so loyal. I mean, you're tapped in, and you're the guy. But I think back. I wanted to ask you, what was your first big wrestling star interview, and how did it go?
First of all, it's great to know that if anybody has your Topps trading card, they can send it to you and
Oh
we'll
yeah, there we
autograph it.
go. Um,
So we put that out into the world.
hey, I've got I finally got a wrestling. I got
That's so cool, and congrats
finally
on that.
after all these years. So,
My first big wrestling interview was Bobby Lashley in 2007.
oh, that's big.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
good.
this kind of
Yeah,
came out of nowhere.
yeah,
I was like 3 months into this job at MTV2 Canada, which was an absolute dream job at 23 years old, which
yeah,
was the coolest thing. I had already interviewed some big musicians and some big celebrities. Being a big wrestling fan, I just asked my boss, I said, hey, I see WWE's coming to
yeah,
town in the new year. Could we interview a wrestler? And she's like, yeah, of course. Yeah, we've done that before. And I was like, I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to get paid to talk to a wrestler. Like this is crazy. So
yeah,
Bobby Lashley came to our TV station. It was like, I don't know, 10, 15-minute interview. It's on YouTube, or at least the highlights of it are on YouTube. It's not a great interview. It's very not good,
yeah,
but it broke the ice, and it's funny. It took me 17 years to do another one with Bobby. I did it last year with him. It's
yeah.
just so funny that it was like completely full circle. And
Yeah.
also, Bobby Lashley looks the exact same because he hasn't aged at all. He might
Wow.
even look younger now
Yeah.
somehow.
Huh.
But, but that was the first one. And that was just kind of me looking for an opportunity. And that's kind of been the whole story of my entire career. But I was just kind of selfishly going, could I interview a wrestler while I'm at work? Oh my gosh, I can. What else could I do here? And I also like, I'm a big UFC fan. I was like, could we like preview the UFC fights? My boss is like, sure, that sounds
Yeah.
like fun. So it was just
Wow.
me looking for these opportunities in the white space. And that's kind of how it began.
Well, we all have that interview. My first real boot was I interviewed Donald Trump at WrestleMania in at the boardwalk when they had the WrestleMania there in New Jersey.
Wow.
And oh, if you ever want to get a nice laugh, I mean, look at that interview. I didn't get his name. I stumbled over his name. I was like nervous. I had the stupid earpiece kept falling out, and so that one really has stood out to me over the years. But when you've done these and you've done hundreds of them by now, Is there anybody that really stands out that you kind of go into it thinking they're going to be this guy, this kind of guy like this, and then they're completely different because when it comes down to it, these guys are performers, and
Sure.
you see them on television, you see the way their demeanor, you hear about them, but is there somebody that stands out that really like you're like, boy, that was not what I expected with that guy?
Yeah. And I think the beauty of an hour-long conversation or longer is like you really
Right.
start to peel back the layers of the onion.
Yeah.
And there's been a few that have like really surprised me. Like I had Mark Henry on the show last year
Yeah, he's
and he got
incredible.
emotional. Like,
Yeah.
and I was not expecting a guy who's, quite literally the world's strongest man. Like
Yeah.
he got emotional talking about what we now know as the Mark Henry spot, where you catch the guy, you roll backwards and you stand up still holding them.
Yeah.
Guys like John Cena do it now, Brock Lesnar do it. And he got emotional talking about the fact of like, it's so difficult to have anything new in wrestling. And like he created something that will now outlast his legacy.
Yeah.
And that made him really emotional. And like, I think for someone who's as big and tough as him to be able to like show his emotions, like that's true masculinity. So that was one that really surprised me. I had Snitsky on. And in the same way, like there's a giant of a man who, when he shakes your hand, you feel like you've broken all of your
Yeah.
fingers, like
Yeah.
beast of a guy. And he started crying, talking about like the idea of like he's from this small town in Pennsylvania and he got out. And so many people don't ever get out of that town. And it meant so much to him that like he was able to dream big and get out. And like that really surprised me too. Like another just big guy, like showing his emotions. Another one that like shocked me is how hilarious Hornswoggle is. Like
Yeah. Yes.
Dylan
Okay.
is the best,
Yeah.
and he has this way of like finding what makes you laugh and just like kind of like poking at it the entire
Yeah.
time. And like I met him a bunch of times before, but I'd never done an interview with him. And like I was rolling the whole
Yeah.
time. I've had
Yeah.
him on the show 3 times now, but I was just rolling. And I think that that was one that like really blew me away of like, yeah, he was funny-ish in WWE, but like Dylan the man is hilarious, up there
Hilarious.
with
Yeah.
like the funniest people ever. Like he could be a comedian, like super successful at it. So that was another one that like I think just shocked me and blew me away. And I love that guy. Whether it's on
Yeah.
camera or off camera, he's the best.
Yeah. And he's so like self-deprecating, kind of, like just play fools on himself and he just tells you stories of when
Yes.
Chris, was inebriated and I mean just yeah, he's hilarious. I remember I did a show with Bruce and Conrad. And he went out and like warmed the audience up. That's what you're saying about him being a stand-up. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, what the hell? And he was funny as it was really great. Uh, you've interviewed a lot of these old school guys, as I did with my podcast. And now we have this new generation, really, and you're interviewing a lot of these guys too. So, how do you compare the two? How have they changed over the years? To me, my view, because a lot of them were just old school, they came from, these small towns. The territories were terrible as far as any money. You just had to have this passion. If you told somebody you're getting into professional wrestling, they'd look at you like, are you out of your mind? It's a whole different world now. How do you compare the two today? How are they different?
I think one of the biggest differences is just like they're not on the road as much now. So
Yeah,
I feel
yeah,
like I think when you talk to some of the old school guys, like when they're on the road 300 plus days a year,
yeah,
all they knew was wrestling. And I
yeah,
think, unfortunately, other parts of their life had to take a back seat to that. You're talking to a lot of people now who it's one, two, maybe 3 shows a week on a busy week. Much better like work-life balance there. And I feel like the stories of like the crazy drug use or crazy alcohol use doesn't seem to be as rampant now. Like a crazy night now after a show is like a few guys going back to someone's room and like playing video games, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Right. Or
Yeah,
like going to someone's bus and playing video games.
yeah. But also back then too, the road was your university. A
Yes.
lot of these, and you'd have these mentors, these old school guys, and they're in the back seat drinking a 6 pack of beer as you're traveling in between, and you're taking all this in and learning. And then you're also learning in the ring with these guys because, you know, it's awful because you're on the road so much, but you're in these places where there's 200 people
Yeah.
100 or 200 people, and you can make mistakes. Now it's the big show. And a lot of these guys will come in, they were D1 athletes, the NFL didn't work out, and taking nothing away from their athleticism, what they can do in the ring, but it is definitely a different business.
For sure. I also
Yeah.
think that the wrestler's relationship with kayfabe has changed so much,
Oh yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think for better or for worse, I think an
Yeah.
argument can be made on both sides, but I think a big part of it is like, think back 20 years ago, how big those shoot interviews were.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like you were truly breaking the fourth wall of like not only talking about the segments, but a lot of those times in shoot interviews, like talking trash on like some of the people you worked with and like talking like peeling the curtain back on like, oh, that person actually was terrible to work with.
Right.
I think the relationship with kayfabe has changed
Oh
so
God,
much.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
when there's a big return or a big surprise, like people aren't worried now or afraid to like the next day peel back the curtain and go, well, actually, this is how it happened. And I'm thinking like right now about Zack Ryder just returned to WWE.
Right.
And there's already a video just a few days later on his YouTube channel of like, here's how it happened. And he
Right.
breaks down the entire thing.
The gimmick, yeah.
Right. Which I love. I've always loved the behind the scenes stuff
Yeah.
as a huge movie fan myself. I love seeing how the strings are pulled and the movie's made. I'd say that one of the biggest differences is when things would happen in the old school days, you wouldn't find out the inner workings of it till like 10, 20
Oh God, yeah.
plus years later, right?
Yeah.
And they finally felt like, okay, I'm gonna really reveal the story now. For years I've been saying I hate that guy, but actually he's one of my best friends.
Right. Well, you talk about kayfabe. I've got a lot of great stories from when I first came in because I told you, I was like this green kid. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. They spoke Carney around me for a year before
Wow.
I'd walk in the locker room, Carney, double Carney, just and that was the way it was. And another great example of it is, Chris, like the WrestleMania 9 documentary came out, and they shot behind the scenes with their own crews, but they shot behind the scenes. And if you look at the video from then, the guys are kind of looking like, what the hell's going on? Nobody told me about this. And they
Yeah.
had all this video, and they were going to do something with it. And at the time, they're like, we can't release this now when they shot it. So it
Yeah.
sat in the archives for years and years and years. And look, it just came out like, a year ago
Yeah.
because it was that strong. Now, yeah, it's totally, the business is totally exposed, but it didn't change the popularity of it. People are still showing up, and it didn't, everybody's it's going to kill the business. No, it didn't.
I think it's actually helped. Like I loved
Yeah,
watching WWE Unreal. And if that's not
yeah,
for you, if you don't like seeing how the magic trick is done, that's
yeah.
cool. You
Don't
don't have
watch
to
it.
watch it.
Yeah,
But like leading up to the last mission or the second last Mission Impossible movie, Mission Impossible 7, when so much of the marketing around that was Tom Cruise going off the cliff on
on
the
the ramp. Yeah,
motorcycle and then
yeah,
pulling the parachute. Like the marketing around the movie was like, look how cool this stunt is and like look at everything that went into the stunt. It made me want to see that movie so
even
badly, right? Like I absolutely needed to see how this played out in the movie. And I love that type of stuff. I was glued to the screen watching Unreal because it's like, what were the inner workings of like that person getting a push when we didn't expect them to? Or what was the inner workings of that person losing that match when we all thought they were going to win?
yeah.
I love seeing how that stuff
Oh
works.
yeah, everybody. It's great, and we really love to see it. Um, I know you have said that your ultimate interview would be to get Vince McMahon. And it's funny now today's, you got to say love him or hate him or what, but you know, I wouldn't have a career if it wasn't for Vince McMahon. And you cannot deny what he did for professional wrestling. We wouldn't be having a conversation right now if all that didn't happen and what he created. But what is it that makes you want to sit him down and have that conversation?
Well,
And
look,
what would it go like?
A Vince McMahon interview is not happening now. That's for sure. Like,
Well, you never
but
know.
I
You
like
never know.
sure.
Yeah.
Never say never,
And
right?
he'd probably be you.
I don't think so. In fact, when he did that interview with Pat McAfee, what was that,
Uh,
2, 3 years ago?
Oh,
I think that was his first long interview in like 18 years or something like that, which was crazy. The idea behind that when I was saying this, and that was probably like 2020, 2021,
Yeah.
was we didn't really know a lot about Vince. Like we saw the public persona of Mr. McMahon, but we didn't really know who like Vince was. And
Hmm.
the reason that I was saying at that time that I wanted to interview Vince was like I want to like figure out like what makes this man tick.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like the Wizard of Oz in a way of like he's the man behind the curtain pulling all the strings, but like who is the actual wizard there? Who's the actual Wizard of Oz? And I was just fascinated by that idea of like we hear that he works out all the time. Well, what's your workout split like? Like I
Right.
want to learn things like that. What are you going to the gym in the middle of the night? Are you going to the like do you sleep? Do you eat
Yeah.
pizza? Like are you a like what are you actually like? And that was what I was like trying to just figure out and talk about. And I think that we got a little bit of that in that Pat McAfee interview, which ultimately may be the last interview that he ever does, last full length interview. And we got a little bit of it in the Netflix docuseries,
Yeah.
but I still feel like there's so much about Vince, the man that we don't know. And quite frankly, now I don't know if I'd want to have an interview with him. I think that there's people like Triple H I would love to like have a deep dive conversation with about what he's doing now in WWE,
Right.
also about his career. Well, there's so many things about his career that I would love to dive into, but it's interesting that there's this one person, like you said, we can all point to. If it's not for Vince McMahon and what he does in the 80s, we
Yeah.
don't get what wrestling turns into in the 90s. And then we don't get the Attitude Era at the end of the 90s. And we don't get you and I sitting here right now having this conversation. And I'm fascinated by that. But what's so fascinating is like, I feel like we've only seen just a sliver of who Vince McMahon is.
Yeah.
And, there's it'd just be interesting to find out, for better or for worse, what he's really all about.
Yeah. But I don't, I think I agree with you there. I don't know. I don't know if, I don't think we ever will know because I don't know if he would ever be capable of revealing it.
Yeah, and he
So
might be one of those
yeah,
people where like the
maybe a
public,
mystery forever, you know?
sure, and he may be one of those people that like the public persona has just taken over, and that's who he is.
Yeah.
Maybe at all times, he's just always on.
I just think there's way too much still locked away.
Oh yeah.
And coming off of that though, because the Vince McMahon era was longer than an era, my goodness. But what it's become, you said that with Endeavor now, which now they're into everything. What do you think that professional wrestling, at least with the WWE, has become now through them?
It's certainly become a global product. I
Yeah,
think
my
that
goodness.
like the biggest thing, like getting Raw on Netflix, I think is so much bigger than most of us realize. Like the fact that it's readily available now in almost every country in the world, live, I think that's another big part of it. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't always like this. And I think
Yeah,
that that's a huge component of it. Also, the fact that it's a global product and that like every PLE, except for like maybe one in Canada, every PLE was in the US for the longest time. And if you look at this past year, you had PLEs in, I don't know off the top of my head, but a number of different countries.
yeah,
And it's interesting to see how like just hungry those fans are. Like the crowds in France were unreal. The
yeah,
crowds in Australia this year were just crazy. And I think it's this idea of like, you think it's popular in the American city in which you live. Yeah,
hmm,
well, it's pretty cool when they take it somewhere on the other side of the planet and you realize, yeah, they're just as hungry for it. They're just as big of a fan as you are. So I think that that's been another big part of it too, is this becoming a global product.
yeah,
And this integration now with ESPN, like ESPN's reporting on WWE on Sports Center.
yeah,
Like that's a crazy thing. And I think because we're in it right now and it's relatively fresh, they haven't even been on Netflix for a full year. The ESPN deal's only a few months old. I think we're not really starting to see the full effects of it quite yet. But if we're able to zoom out a little bit in 5-ish years, I think we're going to start to continue to see how big of a global product this is. And also, I think another component of it is like you're seeing WWE superstars in movies now. And sure, they were
yeah,
peppered in here and there over the last 20 years, but like Cody Rhodes being in The Naked Gun or Cody being in Street Fighter in a pretty major role as Guile. Like that's a big thing. Like
Yeah.
Seth Rollins was in the Captain America movie, his scenes ended up getting cut, but like that's a big thing. And that was not like something that was okayed in the call it Vince McMahon era. If
Yeah.
you
Look at
wanted to do,
Batista.
yeah, if you wanted to do
Like,
movies, you had to leave.
yeah,
John Cena, The Rock, Dave Bautista, you had to take a
yeah.
step away, go do it, and then come back to wrestling.
Right. And The Rock certainly, Dwayne deserves a lot of that credit, but these
Sure.
guys are, it's not, former wrestler or professional wrestler. It's just like Dwayne Johnson or
Yeah.
Dave Bautista. I mean, look what he's been doing,
Yeah.
as a serious actor. And the fact that, like you said, they can just do cameos and everybody pops.
Yes.
That's how well known they are. So it really has become a big part of our culture. Kind of sidestepping out of this because both you and I were involved in this world as far as news goes. I'm still a news anchor. But you see, where do you think that world is going now? Because everything's streaming and you've got all these things, and like local news, it's got to exist. But where do you see like what we call broadcast news at this point going in our future?
I think that the biggest thing that people need to realize, and I realized this right when I left my TV job in 2019, is the number one screen that people are watching is this one that's in your pocket.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And I think that, and I was seeing this when I was at the news stations where like they would put a tweet out or they would put something on Facebook and they would like tease it like the full story is at 6. And it'd be like, no, that's not
Huh?
how the internet works.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
I'm not going to,
Tease it now.
right. Tell me it now.
Right.
Okay. Like,
Or
don't,
I'm going somewhere else.
right. Don't tell
Yeah.
me on Facebook at 2 o'clock to turn on my television
Yeah.
4 hours from now and hope that that story gets told somewhere in that half-hour newscast. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big part of it is like, it is now. The news cycle is now, and it is shorter than it's ever been. I think you're right. There's always going to be a place for local news. There's always going to be a place for national news as well. But I think that some of the news stations that are on the cutting edge of this are they're just putting it on here, right? Like, especially when something big is happening, like if
Yeah.
there's a massive weather event in your area, you get your meteorologist on their account to collaborate with the local news station and talk about the tornado, hurricane, fire, earthquake, whatever it happens to be. I think that that's where it is now. Everybody's going to be looking at this. Like
Yeah.
I don't know the actual percentage, but most news is broken on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever the case may be. And then it lives on through commentary. And the commentary is not being done by the experts. It's being done by the everyman. It's being
Yeah.
done by like your neighbor, or, somebody that is like you and is not an expert on this. I think that
Yeah.
that's where it's going now. In that, I get that there was a ton of misinformation as well,
Yeah.
but it's an
There's the
interesting
danger.
thing
Yeah.
for sure. But it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing where like that's where the news is coming from now is like the doom scrolling. And also it's pretty scary that the algorithm figures out what your political leanings
Oh
are,
my God.
what your interests are, and it's going to show you things kind of in an echo chamber that reinforce the beliefs that you have. And then when it does show you something that's completely against that,
Yeah.
you get upset and, it goes against your views.
Yeah. And it is amazing. I swear to God, they're listening. You say to your wife, I need to get some new running shoes. And the next thing you got is all these running shoe ads on your phone. You're like, where the hell did that come
Oh,
from?
for sure
Like,
it's
right?
listening. For sure.
Yeah, I didn't even look. They brought it to me. Well, the world is definitely changing, and yours certainly has. Last time we chatted, you were still single. Yeah, we've seen how everything has blown up, but you're married and you got a couple of kids now. So how's that changed your life?
That's changed everything. And
Yeah,
it's the
it's great because I want to mention, I said when we could get together to do this, you said, well, I take my daughter to school here, and like I was saying, yes,
yeah.
life has changed.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Being a father is
Yeah,
the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And it's, oh man, I absolutely love those kids so much. So I've got a
yeah,
daughter, Logan, she's 2.5. My son Cooper is 11 months. It's amazing. And it changes you in the most profound way. And it starts to make you realize what's important in life and what's not. And now everything I do is for my wife and my kids, and it's
yeah,
with them in mind. But yeah, I'm so grateful that I've So grateful I found my wife, Rachel. She's the absolute best. And so grateful that through that we've been fortunate enough to have two kids. And oh, it's the most beautiful thing.
It's awesome. And I know The Rock gave you some parental advice. Was he right? I think he said just
Yes.
be you, or what was it?
He said a lot of things and then
Yeah,
and I give him a lot of credit. Like that could have been such a throwaway
yeah,
response.
right.
That was it. I think I think my wife was like 8 weeks pregnant at that point in
Uh,
time. This was the fall of 2022.
yeah,
And I was just like, could I get some fatherly advice from you? And he could have given me like such a throwaway answer. He could have been like, oh, get your sleep now, or like one of
right.
those
Yeah,
cliche things that parents say. But he actually took the time to give me like real advice. And like one of the parts was like, your why is going to start to shift. You're already very focused on your career and like you've grown it so much. He said so many nice things, but he's like, your why is going to start to shift from doing it for you to doing it for them. And he's
yeah,
so right in that.
uh,
Absolutely. The other thing he said was like the skin to skin contact is so important in those first few hours or first few months of their life. And
uh,
he's like, it's going to sound crazy, but like after your baby's born, you're going to take off your shirt in the hospital, stay with me here.
yeah.
And you're gonna, put them on your chest here. And he's so right. Like that skin to skin contact
That's
is a real thing.
that's so funny. The Rock telling you that that where did you get the Dwayne Johnson told me.
Yeah, sir, why are you taking your shirt off in a hospital? Don't worry, The
That's
Rock
right.
said it's okay.
That's awesome. And I couldn't be happier for you. You got so
Thank you.
much going on. Uh, what's next? I mean, I know you had Wu Tungsten. Is that still going? And what's next in this empire
Wu
that you're
Tungsten is
building?
still going. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not in it as much as I was. My
Uh,
best friend Aaron Anders is mostly the ones behind the scenes on that one. I'm not fishing nearly as much. It doesn't make sense for me to be.
yeah, I know it's a big was a big part of your life. I hope that's a
Yes.
getaway for you still.
Yeah, and I hope that that becomes a part of my life again at some point in time. So Woo Tungsten is still chugging along. I gotta say it's Woo Tungsten because
Tungsten,
it's the
that's right.
sound
Yeah.
you make when you catch a
Uh,
giant fish. Woo,
yeah.
yeah.
That's right. Not anything to do with Ric Flair. When he
No, it's
catches a
this
fish, I
this is
bet he
only
does the
two
same thing.
O's. It's just Woo Tungsten. I think what's next for me is just continuing to do what I'm doing. Like I am so incredibly grateful to get to do this every
Yeah.
day, to get to talk to the men and women that I talk to and share conversations with. So I think for me, I've always defined success as being excited for what I'm going to do that day. And then at the end of the day, being proud of what I've accomplished and then go to sleep, wake up the next day and hope to do that again. So I think for me, it's just continuing to do that, continuing to have meaningful conversations with people. And then there's quite a few people I still haven't talked to. So it's like trying to cross them off the list as we head into
Yeah.
2026. Like Triple H is one I haven't done, Randy Orton's one I haven't had a conversation with. A longer sit down with The Miz. I've talked to The Miz before, but it's only been like 5, 10 minutes.
All
What
right.
a career he's had, and I'm glad he's finally starting to get his flowers. The Rock, I've done an interview with The Rock many times before,
Yeah.
10 times, not that I'm counting or anything, but I've never had like the full hour long
Oh,
conversation with him.
wow. That's got to happen.
I'm planting that seed. I saw
Uh,
him at the after party for the Smashing Machine after the LA premiere. And he said, "Hey, Chris, how's the kid?" Because he was
yeah.
remembering that
Yeah.
conversation we
Right.
had. I
Yeah.
said, "I've got two of them now.
No. Yeah.
Two. That's amazing." So I planted the seed of like, I got to have you on the show for like a long form conversation. He's like, "Ah, man, you wouldn't want to talk to me. We've known each other for too long." I'm like, "It's exactly why I
Why?
want to
Right.
talk to you. We need to make this happen." So I think that's what's next for me is like continuing to.
It doesn't matter that we've known each other.
That's what I should have said to him. How long have we known each other, Rock? Well, it doesn't matter how long we've known each other.
We need to sit down and really talk. And you've got this new deal with Cumulus.
Yeah.
That what is that all about, and where is that taking you now? Because now it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
My show has been with Blue Wire basically since the podcast
Yeah.
began, and they've been an amazing partner. And then my deal was coming to an end at the end of this year, and Cumulus came in and showed me an opportunity for where the show could grow. So, on the listener side of things, the show doesn't really change. There may be some different advertisers in there, but for me, this is an opportunity to hopefully scale the show up. Cumulus
Yeah.
is and Westwood One, as you know, is a massive, massive broadcasting corporation who has all kinds of radio stations across the country, and they have some of the biggest podcasters on the network. So
Yeah.
this is an opportunity now to I'm telling people about my show on their show and vice versa. We're running like ad swaps, but it's an opportunity to just hopefully scale things up and just continue to grow. Like there are so many more wrestling fans out there who have never listened to a single second of any of my interviews. Those are the people I would hopefully love to find. If you're
Yeah.
watching this on YouTube, just when you're done with this interview, go check out my podcast, listen to an interview with one of your favorite superstars. And I think also going back to what we were talking about earlier with like just the medium of news is changing. The
Yeah.
reason I have gone so deep into clips is because I understand that like people's attention spans have shifted.
Right.
Also, asking someone to listen to an hour-long podcast, it's a big ask. Asking someone to watch a 32-second clip on Instagram or TikTok, it's much more digestible.
Yeah. And you also love being a host in front of the camera. Any aspirations of doing something else in the entertainment world other than
Yeah.
by, sitting down and talking to people? I know that you had a lot of experience hosting shows. So is that still burning?
For sure. And I still
Fear
have
Factor, maybe something like that, or you
could
would be
you
great.
imagine? But I
Yeah.
also think, and you and I, just as like people who have been in the broadcasting industry for a long time, I would love to host Fear Factor, but I wouldn't even be on I wouldn't think I would be even in consideration when who's the new host of Fear Factor? It's Johnny Knoxville.
Yeah.
How am I going to go into an audition and be a bigger name than Johnny Knoxville or be more entertaining than him? So I get it. I understand it. The media world has been going that way for a long time. I would still love to be up for some of those hosting jobs, but I get that for a long time, those hosting jobs that I went to broadcasting school for, that I was auditioning for, that I was putting
Yeah.
together a demo reel for, those jobs are going to former athletes, reality show stars, Olympians,
Right.
like names, right? And I get it. It's a lot easier to sell a show when you can say, this show is being hosted by this person who you already know, rather than this show is being hosted by this guy whose last name you might not even be able to pronounce. It's Van Vliet.
Yeah. Well, whatever you do, the success has just been phenomenal. And I know whatever you're going to put your mind to, you're going to do it. Chris, we've met a couple of times, but really, you're one of my favorite people to listen to because I really do love the way you sit down with people. And I feel like when it's over, I know them a lot better than I had any idea before that conversation started. So I'm just gonna continue to enjoy watching your rise and what you're doing. And Joe Rogan better watch out, and he better at least get you on that show too, as well. But thank you so much for coming on today, man. It was great catching up.
Great to catch up with you. Thank you for all of the very kind words. And I love that you're back in wrestling. Like, I love it. I love that you're back into it. And like I say this all the time on my show, nostalgia is a hell of a drug.
Mm.
And for so many people, myself included, seeing your face, hearing your voice brings us back to a place and a time. And I think that's such a powerful thing. I love that.
Yeah, and I tell you, I mean, it took me a long time to realize it, but I was blessed to be part of an era that could never be replaced, and
Yeah.
people to this day uh, just remember it for whatever it brought to them in their life then. It just brings back those memories, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
now I get it.
Yeah.
And folks, I hope that you get Chris Van Vliet, not only just listening to him, but who he is after this conversation. Chris, thanks so much.
Oh, thanks again, Sean.